Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have Coach Kasey Teegardin, the special teams coordinator and defensive backs coach at Indiana University. Coach, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good, Coach. Thanks for coming on. Like I said, I kind of want to get into it here in a second, talking DB play. But first, for coaches who haven't had the pleasure of talking to you or watching enough Indiana football, kind of you want to give us your background on kind of how you ended up at Indiana?
Sure. I grew up in South Florida, so I was raised in Stuart, Florida. Played at South Fork High School in Stuart for Dennis Lavelle, who's a longtime coach at Christopher Columbus in Miami, and was recruited to play at University of Charleston in West Virginia. We actually started the program there. I was on the inaugural team in 2003 and started that program from scratch, and was lucky enough to play 5 years there with a redshirt year, and finished as a team captain and a couple really good seasons there, and then stayed on under Tony DeMeo and coached defensive line for a year, linebackers for a year, DBs for a year. Wasn't sure if coaching was for me. Little did I know they were preparing me to become the defensive coordinator. At a very young age. And so at 24 years old, I was a defensive coordinator there at Charleston and spent a year doing that. And then went up to Northwood University in Midland, Michigan, GLIAC school, Division II school there, and coached the defensive backs there. And had a pleasure of working with some great coaches up there. But I was only there about 14 months. And Kevin Wilson called me, I went to Valparaiso from there. The university and was the linebackers coach and special teams coordinator at Valparaiso for a short period of time. Was lucky enough to stay on the staff there and be retained by Dave Cicchini, who's now the head coach at Bucknell. And one night, Kevin Wilson, who was the current head coach at Indiana, called me and asked me if I'd be interested in actually being a graduate assistant, which was tough because I was taking a significant pay cut. I was single at the time. I had met my wife. We were dating, but we weren't quite married and didn't have any kids. And so I decided to take the leap of faith. And, 7 years later, very fortunate to be on Coach Allen's staff and who's done a tremendous job. And, been here 7 years now and just kind of worked my way up the ladder from graduate assistant to recruiting director to safeties coach, special teams coordinator, and now working with defensive backs and also the outside linebackers is in our defense.
Now, I want to kind of hit on a couple things before we get to DB play there. I mean, what was it like taking over as a DC at the college level at 24 years old with being so young? And inexperience is a bad word because you'd already played 5 years, you coached for 3. But what was that process of being very young in your coaching career and taking over as a DC? What was that experience like, and what did you kind of learn from that?
I learned more. I tell people all the time, especially young coaches that call me for advice on taking jobs. I learned more calling plays and designing a defense at that age in that season than I have in any other season thus far in my coaching career. I learned a lot this year as the first time being a Power 5 special teams coordinator for special teams, but I learned more about myself, but also just the game that season. It was definitely very challenging. The first thing I had to do was build a staff because a few of those guys were pretty upset that I was named the coordinator and left. So there was other coaches on staff, and it was I had to build the staff. I think my linebackers coach at the time was a former teammate of mine that had not gotten into coaching, and then a D-line coach. His name was Chris Meyer, who's an Ohio native. His dad's longtime Ball and Wallace defense coordinator, Jim Meyer. He was our D-line coach, and the three of us were all under the age of 24. That was our defensive staff. So it was probably the most fun I've ever had, to be honest with you. But it was definitely a learning experience, and I wouldn't trade it. I think the biggest thing was trying to design the defense. It didn't need to be fixed. The defense wasn't broken. We were already pretty good. It was more of a don't screw it up situation. We had a lot of guys back from a good defense. So it was more of a don't screw it up situation. And we were okay. I think we finished 7-4, I believe, which was a disappointment. We were 9-2 the year before. but defensively, I think we were okay. I learned don't call press man on 3rd and 23. So I learned that very quickly. And then I will tell you, even though I was young at the time, I think I was naive. Our head coach would challenge me on some things, and I acted like I knew more than him. And Coach DeMayo, if you don't know who Coach DeMayo is, in my opinion, he's a Hall of Fame coach, longtime college coach. And he had been around the block, and he's an option guy. He's a triple option guru, and I will give him a lot of credit. He left me alone. But there was a few times he was like, I want you to put this in. And I was like, what does this guy know? So I learned a lot just from that respect of he does know what he's talking about. He's the head coach, it's his program. You shut up and do what they ask you to do. Like I said, I was probably a little arrogant at that age. So that was also a great learning lesson.
Okay. And then I wanted to, because you mentioned Coach Allen there. And I want to ask you about the process and what that's like. Been working with him, and kind of taking Indiana to the next level, because y'all have built a fantastic program there, and you kind of saw it this year what you guys were able to accomplish through most of the season. What has that transition been like working with Coach Allen, and kind of the experience and all that, and what have you kind of learned from working with Coach Allen?
Well, I was lucky, just a couple of things. I was lucky to be his GA when he got here. So when he got here in 2016, that was my 3rd year of my GA, GA-ship or whatever you call it. And I actually interviewed for some jobs that offseason at the FCS and Power 5 level assistant coaching jobs. Thankfully, I didn't get any of them. I think you look back on it and you're like, geez, how can they not hire me? But obviously it wasn't in God's plan, and he wanted me to stay at Indiana. So I kind of became Coach Allen's right-hand man when he got here, because he didn't bring anybody on staff with him. So I was in a phenomenal situation where it would be just him and I upstairs in our staff room watching film at 1 a.m. every single night. And because he is a night owl now, that he watches more film than anybody I've ever met in my life. He prepares, and he still does it today as a head coach. And so I had the opportunity to just sit up there with him. There were some sleepless nights, some long nights, but just to learn from him and see how he approaches the game and what he has to do mentally to approach every single week is really astounding. So then he created the recruiting job for me, which he did not have to do. And that's the type of man that he is. I didn't have a job when my GA-ship was done. I always felt like comfortable. I didn't want to settle for a job. I thought about going back to a smaller school. I actually did for a short period amount of time. But he created this position for me just to keep me around and take care of me. And again, that's just the type of guy he is. He's very loyal to his assistants, makes it easy to work for him. So the biggest thing about Coach Allen is he doesn't steer from who he is. And so obviously, our DNA, our team DNA that we call it, and what we're about is called LEO, which is love each other. And as soon as he became the head coach here, he stamped his brand on that. And I think he was, there's a lot of people mocking him, ridiculing him. What does this guy know? Everybody used to call him a high school head coach, right? I mean, that's how he was labeled. He was labeled as a high school guy. A high school coach. And you could hear it everywhere. And even people I talk to, friends I talk to, they're like, what's it like working for a high, but if you fast forward to what he's done and what he's accomplished now, it's because he never changed who he was. He never changed what his vision was. His vision for Indiana never changed from day one until today. And it's not going to change tomorrow. So that's who we are, and that's what he's built. And I think you build a staff that believes in it. And did everybody believe it first? I'm sure they didn't. I'm sure I was, speculating a little bit as well, even though I felt like I was his right-hand guy when he first got here. He leaned on me very heavily that first year. So as a staff beginning to believe, the players started to believe, and we started to win games. And I can point to one single game, and I'll never forget it. We were playing at Maryland 2 years ago. And for whatever reason, man, we struggle when we go to Maryland. I don't know what it is. I mean, they can win one game. They can be 1-10, and we can be 9-2, and we'll struggle at Maryland. I don't know what it is. We just, as a team, we got to overcome that. But we're there, and we're in a back and forth dogfight. And we could not, our offense couldn't move the ball in the fourth quarter. Defensively, we gave up a touchdown. Then we got a takeaway. late in the fourth quarter, had great field position offense, couldn't do anything with it. They get the ball back. They got a chance to drive down and score when we intercept the ball. In the past, being at Indiana and seeing what transpires over the time, we would have given up a touchdown and lost that game. And defense forced 2 takeaways in the last 4 minutes of the game for us to help win. And I remember being in the coach's locker room, and I went up to him, I was like, Coach, just so you know, I said the tide had turned. Like, to me, that was a turning point for us. We went 8-5 that year, which was a lot. You know, Indiana hasn't won 8 games in a long, long time. Played in the Gator Bowl. So I went up to him and I told him, I said, Coach, this is the turning point, I'm telling you. And I don't remember what our record was at that point. We had maybe just, 5-2 or something like that. But I knew that game was a game we would have lost in the past. And for whatever reason, I think he had just built enough belief in the players and in the system and the program that, hey, we're going to be okay. We're going to win this game. We're going to finish this game. And that was a big deal. But it feeds from the head coach's vision. And I think as long as the head coach doesn't steer away from what he believes in, and he can get a staff around him that buys in and believes in it, and the staff can filter to the players and the players buy in, then I think, the sky's the limit. I think we've totally proved that here in Indiana. Now, we've done a better job recruiting, but it is about development, and it's about the relationships with your players. We don't have number one, we don't have 5 stars, and we've maybe got a handful of 4 stars, a handful. But we're beating the Penn States, who have a roster of 60, and we're beating Michigan, who has a roster of 70, 4 and 5 stars. And so why are we beating those teams? It's because of the relationships, the trust, and the system that he's built amongst the team. And there's not a doubt in my mind that that's what it is. The development, not only physically, but, the relationship piece that you build with your players and your team.
Okay, and so let's kind of move into kind of like the overall defensive back, and I want to start in before we get into drills and the actual play aspect. Let's start in the meeting room. What does a typical DB meeting look like for you, and how you structure it, and what you focus on from a day-to-day basis?
So on a day-to-day basis, if we're in season, I'm going to walk in. The first thing I'm going to do, I make everybody stand up and I tell a joke. I think the attention span today of players. And I'll be honest, as coaches too, it's hard to sit there for 40 minutes in a 45-minute meeting and stare at a screen. So I do like to break it up. I've always got candies, snacks, waters, Gatorades, everything's in our meeting room. I always have that as well. My wife does a great job of providing our guys with that. The first thing we do, man, we stand up, we tell a joke, and we sit down and we go to work. So if we have install going in for that day, I always install it first. And the reason is I don't want to run over on film and not be able to get to the install. And then I'm scrambling to hit the install and the details of everything when we're trying to go out to practice. So the first thing I always hit is the install for that day. Any questions? All right, great. If we have film to watch, we'll watch some film. If not, we'll watch cut up to the install and just kind of focus on those. And I'm very meticulous. To me, it's all about details. I'm a very detail-oriented guy. Where are my eyes? What foot is up? Am I pedaling? Am I scooching? What's my technique? Where should my eyes go? If this guy does this, what do I do? So I'm a very detail-oriented guy. And after about 15 to 20 minutes, and I have a player in the room that holds me accountable to this, and I challenge him, I'll give him a break. And I call it a phone break. So 5-minute phone break, right? Kids can't be without their phones nowadays. So, I don't mind them having it in the room, so to speak, but they know they put it away when the meeting starts. They could take it out when we get the 5-minute phone break. And that's also guys get up, go to the bathroom, get something to drink, just walk around. So a 45-minute meeting, it's about 15, 20 minutes of install, talking, maybe some cut up, some film, stuff like that. 5-minute phone break, then we go right back to watching more film. And if there's questions, we always answer the questions. We have a big enough meeting room at times. I'll bring guys down front and we'll actually walk through the techniques. So if it's a pedal or a scooch or leverage on something or matching routes or things like that, we can walk through that right there in the front of our meeting room, which I'll usually try to take advantage of too, especially if we're going to try to man match a difficult combination out of a bunch or stack or something like that, where we just kind of talk about eyes and leverage and those type of things and depth. So that is pretty much the gist of it. I do always ask guys. When I install things, I ask them to repeat things. So I'll install it. I'm a big board guy, right? Get up there, board it up first. I will from time to time call guys up and have them draw, and talk, teach the room through things. Some guys are comfortable with that. Some aren't. I think it's smart to call the guys that aren't comfortable, because the guys that are comfortable and get up in the front of the room and draw it, they're going to call and communicate on the field. The guys that are uncomfortable and unsure, they're not confident. So you need to get them up in front of the room as much as possible and instill the confidence in them. So I try to do that as much as possible too, and call guys out and have them answer questions.
Okay, and so you mentioned footwork and technique there. What from high school to college? What do you see as like the most common thing kids and players struggle with in that transition in terms of footwork, technique? Which one is the hardest for them to transition to from high school to college?
I think it's just the false steps, and maybe, are they T-stepping out of their pedal on their brake? Are they bicycle stepping, right? So to me, the T-step, it eliminates an extra step or two, depending on where your leverage is. I think, if you're in your pedal, and I'm just using the safety, for example, if you're in your pedal and I'm pedaling out and I bicycle, to me, it's like starting a motor. It takes a second to get going again, right? Where I just want to keep my pad level low, right? My nose over my toes and knees over my toes. And we use shin angles too. We talk about shin angles, right? Shin over your foot and things like that. So, but keep your pad level low, and then I should be able to just plant and drive in one step. I shouldn't bicycle. And you see it, like some of these kids go to all these trainers and they're teaching them bicycle pedal and all those things. I just think that's wasted movement. And in the Big Ten, again, some of the receivers we have to face, right? Chris Olave. Okay, well, we may not have the speed to match Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson. So we have to be perfect with our brakes. And if they're driving an out route at 7 and we're at 10, I've got to close that 3-yard gap as fast as possible. And there's quarterbacks in this league that will carve you apart. So, we have to focus on those things. I think that's the biggest transition. Maybe it's the pad level. In terms of technique, I'll tell you the biggest thing that we see is practice habits, just in general, right? Just forming practice habits. And Coach Allen is a huge emphasis on practice habits, how we finish every single drill, your alignment, the knee bend, all those things. Even in walkthroughs, pre-practice, like our guys are in stances, their knees are bent, their eyes are where they're supposed to be. It's like a live snap, but you're not full speed, So trying to emulate that game speed, game repetition as much as possible.
Okay, and then so you kind of going from there. What does your base everyday drills look like that you have to start off with before you get into technique specific stuff or install specific drills that you're going to focus on that day?
I'm a big footwork guy, so some sort of cones. We always warm up with a pedal progression. Call it just pedal pro. It's the first thing that's always on the first 5 minutes of my Indy. So we'll pedal pro it. That includes the brakes and the cones, right? So pad level, those type of things. I'm a big hip flip guy, so we ran a ton of 2-trap this year, cover 2 stuff. So just the safeties, breaking off the hashes. So just flipping my hips and driving, opening up on footballs. How fast can I get off the hash? Those are things, everyday drills that we're due as well. And then honestly, we do a tackle drill every single day. It's usually some sort of pursuit or angle, because we're always in the open field. I'm trying to, try to emulate that as much as I can. So it is a space drill. And that, even if we do a tackle circuit as a group, I'm always going to do some sort of tackle drill in my individual as well. And then a takeaway. And usually it involves some sort of just breaking downhill. Could be straight on 45 degree, could be a 90 degree break. Just something that, again, but it all goes together, right? I'll start them off with a pedal progression or a footwork or flip their hips or go get it from the post or from the half field. So those drills all kind of work themselves together, but the first one every single day would just be your general footwork, getting loose, the warm up stuff, kind of get them, get their minds just in the right spot for the rest of practice.
Now you mentioned turnovers there, and that's one of the things I wanted to hit on next with you is y'all have done a very good job at forcing turnovers while you've been there, and even at some other prior stops, because when I was doing some of my research for this, you've done a very good job at producing turnovers in various spots you've been at as well. How have you been able to create not only the culture to to force turnovers, but to actually force the turnovers?
Well, the first thing is you got to get the players to understand how critical they are to a game, right? And you talk about what are the factors as a head coach. What are some of those things those head coaches look for that win games? Field position, right? Turnover ratio. Okay, so turnover ratio is a monster one, right? And then probably red zone. Are you finishing your drives or defense stopping, right? So red zone, defense, offense, turnover ratio, field position. To me, those are three critical things. And obviously there's the third down battle, right? But those are the critical things that win games. So we, number one, all right, and I just said it, but we say takeaways on defense. And it is an aggressive mindset that we're trying to instill in our players. If anybody says, we call it the T word, and I'm going to say it on here, but turnover. If I say turnover, it's 25 push-ups.
Okay.
And we have, a 60-year-old quality control that if he says turnover, Coach Allen makes him do push-ups. And it's like, so, he does take Coach Allen will do push-ups. If Coach Allen says turnover, he will do push-ups. Now, he is the head coach, and he talks about offense turning the ball over and defense taking the ball away. So he gets away with it more now than he has in the past, but I've seen him do push-ups for saying it to defensive guys. Our players do it. Our coaches do it. And it seems like something's, little, but it is to us, it's an aggressive mindset. It's our job to take the ball away from the offense. Okay. And so we preach it every single day. We set a limit every single practice. This is how many we have to have. It's usually 5 in a practice. All right. If we don't have that, then we have gassers after practice or some sort of punishment. Could be up downs if we're trying to save their legs, but we've been known to run a ton of half gassers in practices if we don't reach our goal. So there's, our kids always have that in their mindset. They don't carry over to the next day. So if they get 7 in one practice, those 2 don't carry over to the next one. It's got to be 5 every single day. We do a circuit. So every, twice a week. In season, and then in spring ball, we'll do it just about every day. We do a takeaway circuit, and it's just various drills. There's, you've got your regular fumble recovery, your scoop and score. We do like a run the hoops, force a sack, strip sack, other guys scoop and scores. We do a fumble, recover a fumble, like basically in a crowded area, right, where we're covering the 4 points and getting the field position, covering the football up. We always incorporate some sort of a ball drill where it could be for the D-line, it's redirect on a screen, shoot the hand, tip drill, next guy's got to catch it. So just anything that we could do to get our guys to get their hands on the football constantly. If we're in practice, we're going against our offense, okay? Even if we're in pads and the ball's on the perimeter, we're going to rake at the football. We're going to punch or rake, right? Peanut punch, right? Peanut Tillman was arguably one of the greatest at punching at the football and just creating those havoc plays. So we call it the peanut punch, or we're going to try to rake at it, where we're just coming over the top, finding the fingertips, trying to rake the ball out. And we'll do that on the perimeter as guys are going in to finish the tackles and things like that. But we don't tackle in space here. We tag off anyways. So it's an opportunity for those guys to go, hey, I had that tackle, but really I'm going in and aggressively attacking the football. And again, it's all just the aggressive mindset. So we drive it home. We focus on it. It's in our defensive DNA. We talk about tackling, takeaways, and effort. Those are the 3 things that we focus on defense: tackling, takeaways, and effort. And we preach that to our kids over and over and over again on that side of the football. So, I think just the major emphasis that we put on it, it comes from the vision of the head coach. That's something that he brought here when he was a defensive coordinator. And then at other places, it's really just been the same thing. I think you have to do a good job as a play caller mixing up, the zone man, right? And your pressures and how you're forcing those quarterbacks. I think this year we made the quarterbacks that we faced very uncomfortable because we brought so much pressure from so many different places that they didn't know where it was coming from. And I think that a lot of those guys got happy feet and had trouble reading our safeties. Coach Jones did an unbelievable job with those guys this year on the rotations and the Huskies, the outside backers. And so we were able to force a lot of takeaways just by the pressures we were bringing and forcing quarterbacks to get some happy feet and try to force some footballs they really shouldn't have. But just putting the emphasis itself with the aggressive mindset that I am going to go take this football away, and then working on it in practice. Like I said, we do it over and over and over again.
I got a couple more things for you. And I'm always curious how people practice this because everybody's different. And how do you practice? I mean, obviously your rosters are large in most high schools, but how do you practice dealing with tempo and no huddle teams that are constantly moving? Is it multiple huddle off? Is it multiple scout teams? That way you can just go back to back. What is it? How do you guys deal with that in a practice situation?
I think that's the hardest thing. I'll be honest with you. I think that's the hardest thing. That's a great question. I think that's the hardest thing to number one. I mean, it's not hard to run a tempo play, for a scout team because you can say, hey, you're going to run the same play twice. But usually, right? I mean, teams do that from time to time, but usually it's some sort of variation off the first play they run. So we've a couple things. We call a zigzag drill. It's basically what it is you have 4 sets of cones. The cones are the offensive linemen. So you would start off, the first set of cones would be on the 40 going in on the right hash. All right. And I'm looking at it as from a quarterback's perspective. We have our coaches play quarterback. So the defense is facing me. So it would be the defense's left hash. We have 2 huddles of skill players. So there's 4 sets of cones. One's on the 40, one's on the 30, one's on the 20, one's on the 10, and they alternate hashes as it goes down the field. Okay, if you can try to picture this in your head. We have 2 groups of coaches, 2 groups of huddles, right? And so I would be at the 40, and I would have 5 skill players with me. I show them a card. They burst to the line. Our defense has got to get the call, get the formation, and I'm snapping that ball really, really quick. They do an up down. They sprint to the next set of cones where the other coach already has his group and has already shown those guys their play while we're running ours. They sprint and get lined up. The defense has to sprint to the next set of cones, get the call, get lined up, turn around, see the formation. I mean, it's very fast, you can imagine. And then once our group goes from the 40, we are running forward to the next set of cones for us on the 20. So as an offense, we always stay on the right side. The other huddle always stays on the left. They go from the 30 to the 10. We go from the 40 to the 20. And our defense basically takes all 4 reps. And it's a zigzag where they zigzag back and forth down the field, but they got to get the call, see the formation. And that's one way we do it. We, under Kevin Wilson here, and Coach Allen did it initially, we gotten away from it. The first 5 minutes of practice, we would go good on good, and we called it red ball. People call a bunch of different stuff, right? And so, but we call it red ball here. And it's not a real tempo. I mean, offense is going to basically run 6 plays. Our 1 defense is out there. It's our versus our 1 offense. They're going to run zone read bubble the first play. The second play, they're going to run some sort of pass, right? But we're moving the ball down the field. Even if we tag them off in the backfield, we're going to move the ball and set it, and the offense is going as fast as they can. And we've got to react and go as a defense as fast as we can. So that's another way that we try to combat it. If we're working with scout teams, I'll tell you one thing that we have is GoPro, which I think is clutch. The GoPros nowadays, I don't know if you guys have heard of those, but they're great for our scout teams. We usually tag 2 plays. So number 1, we try to use our offensive terminology for our offensive scout guys as much as possible. So we can call inside zone on the first play that we're going to, if we're playing Ohio State, right, we can call inside zone the way they're going to try to run it. And then we can tell our offense when we're in the huddle with them, our scout offense, hey, get ready. We're going to go back-to-back plays here, and the second play is this. Well, number 1, we'll tell them in the huddle. Well, sometimes those guys forget. So right after the inside zone, we're screaming the next call to them in our offensive terminology, trying to get them on the ball as fast as possible. Now, it does come down to a couple of things. 1, how fast can you get the ball spotted? So you got to have great managers or coaches, whoever's they got to get the ball from the other guy. Team's got to get lined up as fast as possible. So just trying to stress your defense as much as possible. Those are 3 things that we try to do. Like I said, when we're working with our scout team, it's usually back-to-back plays. You don't have it's hard to go a whole series of tempo with your scout team. Mm-hmm. We can do it with that zigzag drill. Yeah. And stress your defense out in that way. But I do think that's one of the hardest things on a defense, and it got us in the bowl game this year. Period. That's probably the reason we gave up 26 points. Well, I know it is. We just couldn't handle the tempo, getting getting the call in and our guys getting their feet. We call it feet in the ground. Our feet were not in the ground for a lot of those snaps.
Now, going from there, as we start wrapping this up, I got two more questions for you. When you guys are looking when you guys are looking in the off season and self scouting yourself and looking back, see what did and didn't work, what are you guys specifically looking at to, okay, this worked, this didn't work? What data points are you actually looking at to figure out, okay, this is where I need to add, this is where I need to get rid of, etc.?
Well, number one, we're going to look at, we break it down just like we would break down a game plan. So you've got for example, I'll just do third down, for example, right? You got your third and short, your third and medium, your third and long, your third and extra long. So we do it by D&D, right? So third and 1 to 2, third to 5 is medium, 6 to 9, I think, is long, and then 10 plus is extra long. So that's just how we kind of categorize, our breakdowns alone. So then in the off season, we'll go back. All right, what did we call on third and medium? Okay, here's the list of calls that we called. All right, we break it down all just to yards per play and wins and losses. So for example, if we called, a pressure with man free behind it, we'll say a 5-man pressure, right, with man free behind it. Okay, that gave up, 9.7 yards per play every time we called that. Probably not a good call, but right, I mean, you may have had one explosive off of that. So we got to look at wins and losses of the plays as well. So we called it 5 times. 4 times it won third down for us. And then 1 time we gave up a 20-something yard pass route where we gave up 9.7. So the number, so you can't always look at yards per play where, hey, 80% of the time, this is a great call for us. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
We kind of break it down that way, and we do it for every single segment. But then there's times where you'll look at your yard per play and, you're giving up on third and medium, right, which again is 4 to 6. We're giving up 9 yards of play. Well, we brought this zone pressure, 3 under 3 deep zone pressure, right? Okay, well, it gave up 9 point whatever yards per play. We only won 1 time out of 6. So that's a terrible call. We probably need to look at either not calling it. Why did we give up? And we watch and study every single clip. It's very meticulous. It's very detailed, and it's going to take us several weeks. We probably self-scout in the off season for about 4 weeks. Okay. It's 5 days a week for 4 weeks, and we're going through every single call. What was the breakdown of the play? And we note it. We make comments in our plays as we watch them. Why did we win this rep? Why did we lose this rep? What was good? What wasn't good? Was it the disguise, right? So was it the play call? Okay. Was it the offensive scheme, like the play call that just got us? Was it a physical error? Did somebody miss a tackle? Were we in position to make the play and get the stop, and we missed the tackle and the guy went for 40 yards after that? Right. So was it a physical mistake? There's a lot of different, comments that you make as you watch it, and as we kind of go through and game plan that's the biggest thing for us. And then we like to just carry over. Obviously, if something's very successful for us, we're going to carry that over. But hey, how can we tweak it just a little bit? Because you got to, in this conference, there's a lot of very smart offensive coaches, right? And head coaches. Yeah. So you've got to keep them on your toes. How can we tweak this? Keep the the scheme the same, but hey, we'll give them out of this look this year. Maybe they won't be onto it. So just those type of things are things that we do look for. When we're breaking down and we're kind of going through our self-scout every single year. And we've completely thrown stuff out that have been successful in the past, but we've run it for 3 years and teams finally figured it out. Well, you got to move on from it. You got to study other teams, see what other teams are doing. We communicate a lot with people that are in this profession that we know and can trust, and try to bounce ideas off each other. That's the beautiful thing about this job, the brotherhood of it.
And then, just out of curiosity, what from a personal standpoint, what is your favorite coverage and why? What is your if you had to live and die in one from a personal standpoint, what would that be?
Yep, I like I've grown up a quarters based guy, but I think there's different ways to play quarters. Okay. So it's just but I would probably be labeled as a quarters guy if I was a defensive coordinator, and people would probably know that I'm going to play some faster form of quarters. I think the reason is it allows you to be aggressive against the run in the box. You know, you can play 9 in the box, and you can stop the run, I believe, in quarters. And obviously, you know, we don't play a lot of read quarters where we're reading, you know, 2 on the out, stuff like that, trying to jump it with the corner. You know, we're playing, it's more match man type. I think you're safe against the verticals because you always have those vertical players. It's very mannish, which I like as well. But again, like I said, you could be aggressive against the run and get 9 in the box. I also don't think offensive coordinators are patient enough. I think, you know, the weakness obviously for us is that 5-yard out. Well, I dare you to throw 15 5-yard outs all the way down the field. Eventually, you're going to try to take a shot. And when you do, I'm going to be there. So, you know, like I said, I'd probably label myself as a quarters guy. We run it several different ways here. We actually run quarters 2 or 3 different ways. Just the way that we play our safeties and our corners and our overhang players. So I think it's a great changeup for us. And we've got checks and everything that go off of them that make it, I think, you know, difficult. The other thing that I've grown to like that was big for us was just we ran a ton of cover 2 this past season.
Yeah.
And did it a lot of different. We ran some simulateds off of it. Some simulated pressures off of it and dropped our weak side end. And I think Coach Womack did a phenomenal job with that this year, just mixing that up. And whenever I move on somewhere, I'll be taking a lot of that stuff with me. It's really good.
Okay. Well, Coach, I thank you for coming on and talking a little ball and talking a little DB play and scouting and dealing with some practice stuff. Coaches, if you want to get a hold of Coach, give him a follow on Twitter. His Twitter handle will be below. Again, like and share this video so other coaches can see it. Bonus content, go to the Patreon as normal and see also all of our affiliate and sponsor links below as well. And again, that was another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.